guys? Welcome to the HawksZone Rundown Emergency Podcast tonight. We were going to wait till tomorrow and jump on with Mookie Alexander when we got our bi-weekly Pulse of Hawks. But big news, the Seahawks just announced that they hired their new OC, Klint Kubiak, former OC of the Saints. We're going to break it all down for you guys. So, make sure you guys get your comments in, get your super chats in. We're going to run through this. If there's good chats, we'll pop them up. We'll talk about it. And guys, if anybody watching, you haven't subbed yet to the channel, go down, hit the sub button for us, like the videos, share the videos. We're going to break all this down for you guys on the other side.
So y'all can sit here and ask me all the questions y'all want to.
Don't you ever talk about me.
Yeah, let's go. It's go time, baby.
Here comes Geno. Steps up, takes that shot to the end zone. It is Metcalf. 20.
I'm just about that action, Moss.
You about to go get it. You just like to do it.
That's what it is.
Off me.
Nobody in the world can do it.
Are you kidding me? Trying to do that. Pass is caught back in. Jackson Smith is jigged up. The circus music moves in. Throws for Baldwin. Oh my goodness, he caught it. By the way to the railroad.
This is the HawksZone Rundown with your hosts, Ryan and Bryce.
Hey, HawksZone Rundown Live coming at you. Big news. The OC search is over. Hawks got their guy, man. Klint Kubiak names the Seahawks OC, former offensive coordinator of the New Orleans Saints. Prior to that, he's jumped around a little bit, but he's had some success kind of where he's been. Obviously, Dad Gary Kubiak, a lot of history there and ties there. Excited here, man. We talked about it, said, he was definitely a guy on our list that, obviously he's been in for a couple of interviews that we would be comfortable with him if they went in and hired him, man. What's your take, man? Klint Kubiak named it the OC of the Hawks here.
I'm honestly really excited about it. The thing for me was when they started going through this and, going through this process of who they were going to hire, I kept thinking, okay, there's got to be guys out there that run McVay, Shanahan, 12 personnel, 13 personnel kind of looks that Mike Macdonald is probably going to want to go after. He's going to want to go after someone that's going to establish the run. They're going to have play action. That's right up the Shanahan, McVay, Norv Turner kind of tree. That's what they lived on. And so then when Kubiak came in and he was listed as, they were going to virtually interview him. And then they decided they were going to bring him in he was the first guy they brought in for an in-person. I was like, okay, I like the direction that they're going. They're going after someone that has a history. Yes, he's still young. He's only 37. He's only called plays for 2 teams. And he's got 11 years of NFL experience. So he's kind of that balance of we want someone that's younger, but we also want someone that's been in the league. And then they also got the bonus that he's done it before. He's called plays. He's done those kind of things. And so I think, honestly, this is a very, very good hire. I think, when you look at the candidates, we know about Fraley, we know about Udinski, and then some other names started to come out. Byron Leftwich was one, Thomas Brown. And then they had, Adam Stenovich from Green Bay. And then apparently Jeremy Fowler today released that, they'd also interviewed Travis Switzer, who was the run game coordinator for the Ravens. So they didn't just kind of hone in on these 3 guys and that was it. They did some other research. They went out and they expanded. And that's the one thing I think, we talked about how it almost took like a month to get this done. Big part of that is I think this new regime is not just going to go back to something that's familiar to them. They're going to go and test the envelope. They're going to go do their research on guys. And I think this is a good hire. Kubiak is probably the highest floor out of the guys that got second interviews. And he may have a high ceiling and we just haven't seen it yet, but he's definitely the highest floor out of that group where if Fraley or Udinski really could fail, they were going to fail, I think, worse than Kubiak would.
Yeah, that's a good point. I love your point about the floor, right? Because, I think that's one of the things that I thought about that, you took a chance, you went out of the box last season with Ryan Grubb, right? And, whether that was, because they didn't have a lot of time, that, it was one of those seasons. Mike gets hired later and, all the stuff we talked about. Now you have a full off season. But, people last year were like, hey, I like the hire, man. It's not the same old thing. We'll go outside of the box. Maybe this will work. It didn't work. but it didn't work, and it was pretty bad. So I think that was the thing too. I don't know if this regime was just about, like you said, I think having the higher floor made a lot of sense, and a guy that just is younger but also 11 years in the league, like just a lot of those things going for him. Then you look at what he's done with the Niners. He was the passing offense passing game coordinator, right, and led Purdy to a league leading passer rating of 113 and a Pro Bowl appearance. And then when he was in Minnesota with Kirk Cousins, led him to a Pro Bowl. Kirk, I think the numbers where I was looking it up, 33 TDs and 7 picks, right? So those are numbers you like. And even last season, you want to talk about the Saints offense. They got off to a hot start. They got off to a really good start, but then injuries piled on big time, right? But they still ranked, what was it? I think they were middle of the pack in scoring, and they were also 37 sacks allowed. So, they were in the top half of the league in those statistics. So that comes down to the offensive line, and that comes down to how we're going to run the football. And when Mike Macdonald says we want our offense to mirror our football team, so obviously you mentioned, obviously this guy was in for a second interview. It wasn't about convincing Mike. He's choosing a guy. I just talked about some of the stats the last few years and how he's elevated quarterbacks. And I want to get to our next topic in a sec here about QBs, but that gives you confidence no matter what quarterback's going to be in this building next year, that he's getting the most out of them.
Well, and that's the thing, right? Like, you look at Klint Kubiak, and this is where the hire, to me, I think gets a little bit of a bonus boost, is you've seen his ability to work with veteran quarterbacks. But even this year, what he did with Spencer Rattler, and I know people are going to go, oh, well, they didn't win a lot of games. Spencer Rattler didn't play horrible. Yeah, he wasn't elite. He's a rookie quarterback, but he gave Spencer the ability to be successful in certain situations. They won some games. So that also leads to the fact that Seattle does, which I expect them to do in April, draft a quarterback. You've got a guy here that knows how to start the developmental process of bringing in a rookie quarterback. The other thing with Kubiak, too, that's, I think, kind of maybe the other big component is, I think he had the best chance of potentially building the best staff around himself, just because he's got over 11 years worth of connections in the NFL. His dad, even to a point, he's going to get connections through that. He has, worked under some coaches, like just for an example, like I did a bunch of research today after it came through, but like his whole coaching staff, guys that were on his staff when he was in, Minnesota, the running back coach, Kennedy Polamalu. Guess who our running back coach is in Seattle? Kennedy Polamalu. He's got, Phil Riershire, who was his O-line coach. And, he played a crucial role in designing and executing the zone blocking scheme that's central to the Kubiak offense and the Mike Shanahan offense. Like, he gets it, receiver coach, Keenan McCardell. Like, he's worked with a fair group of guys, that are going to allow him to build a staff around himself. And that's the thing, I think that's really interesting about it. Like, Rick Dennison is someone I think that he's maybe going to bring with him. That's a good seasoned O-line and run blocking coach, run coordinator, and that's the thing that's going to be interesting, I think, is just who he puts around himself and how they help elevate this offense, getting more veteran NFL guys into the offensive room. Because, when Mike did his thing on defense, we didn't really question it, because in the worst case, let's think of the worst case in Mike Macdonald. If Dirty had got a job, Mike Macdonald's still the guy that built the defense. Mike Macdonald's still the guy that can keep calling the plays. Even if next year he hands the play calling duty off to Dirty and, for whatever reason, Dirty leaves the following year. Okay, cool. Mike just takes back that responsibility, brings in a new guy and starts working with him. What I think he wanted to, and this is maybe, the hang up with the whole process, was maybe he was looking for a guy that was going to commit longer than, I'm going to be here till I have success potentially, and I'm going to leave and be a head coach somewhere. And I think there's a good argument that Klint Kubiak isn't going to just bounce out of here in 2 seasons and be a head coach. I think there's a good chance, potentially he might be here for, maybe 4 or 5 years. He probably will leave eventually for a head coaching job if it works, but he also doesn't have, the kind of hot coordinator tag on him currently after his latest stint. to be the head coach like he did last year coming out of San Francisco as a passing game coordinator, but he's got to build up his rep as well. And I think the more success he has, the better it all be for him in the future. If he comes here and for 5 years, Seattle has a top 15 offense, he'll have way more credibility to go get himself a head coaching job.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And man, and that's all we need to be, man. When we're looking at this, and like you said, I like the combination of him and his accolades, experience, the youth, and what he's done with the quarterbacks mainly. What he got out of Brock Purdy. I mean, really, when you look at it, led them into an NFC championship, Pro Bowl year, passer rating leader. Like, a guy like Brock, you look at that and you say, listen, we don't have to be anything amazing, because we talked with who was it, Chris Clough, our last guest on the show, thinking, hey, he's got hopes that he thinks, look, this could be a top 5 defense really, really quickly. So, and you combine that with the offense that doesn't need to be anything crazy. Like Mike Macdonald says, we just need complementary football. And that's a big thing. So if this guy, the biggest thing, if this guy aligns with what Mike wants to do, I think it's going to be a great hire, because we don't need this team to be a top 5, shootout style team if we really believe in this defense. So that's what I like a lot. I think the name has a lot of merit to it. You're not going completely outside the box. This guy's got a good resume. I like the hire, man. I know we talked about Fraley. Obviously, he was off the board after. But, even if you put those two together and say, well, if they were still available, which one would you? I don't know. I think Fraley's more the unknown, yes, what he's done in Detroit, but again, is that going to carry over to, just business as usual Seattle if he came over here and now he's at OC, right? So I think because Clint has some experience being an OC as well, I think, that plays a big role as well. And I like the hire, man. I'm fired up about it.
Well, and the interesting thing too, like just, I've reached out to a few people and trying to piece this together, what happened, because Mike Garafolo came on like almost a week ago saying Kubiak was the front runner. Like he was the guy, the front runner in this entire conversation. Even when he went back on later this week after the whole Fraley and us waiting to see if Fraley was going to be the guy, he even said, he's like, as far as I know, Kubiak's kind of still the guy. He's still the front runner. The thing that people are assuming is that Fraley got offered a contract. I haven't heard that he had been offered a contract. I heard I hadn't really heard anything on it, whether or not he had been offered one. I heard there were hiccups with the passing game coordinator situation. Like he wanted Antoine Randall to be his passing game coordinator. Antoine Randall didn't want to come to Seattle. He wanted to go to Chicago, where inevitably he ended up. And, it could have been a situation this week where they had their second interview with Fraley on Tuesday, and it didn't go well, or it just came to a point where he came out here and it was Seattle had to blow his socks off to really get him to potentially come out here, because there were 2 days between the end of the Lions season and him coming to Seattle. Dan Campbell may have already gone to him on the Sunday or the Monday and been like, look, go do your interview. 100%. I'm encouraging you to go do it. But if you want to stay here with your family, you have 5 kids and all that, you're going to be promoted to run game coordinator, which I knew was going to happen if that was where he was going to stay, is what I had been told. He was going to be the run game coordinator and the O-line coach. So he gets that promotion and that pay bump and all that stuff, not necessarily having to go out and be an OC and potentially fail and rebuild an O-line. He gets his guys that he already knows and can continue to build the thing in Detroit. So this whole week may have been the Seahawks and Kubiak sitting there going, hey, how do you piece together this staff? Who are the guys you're going to get? What does the contract look like? And I wouldn't be surprised, like tomorrow and Tuesday, if we don't find out who's on Kubiak's staff and who that's currently on Seattle staff and offense. Maybe he's out of a job.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, who knows? All that comes into play, man. What do you think now if we sort of look ahead and what that means maybe potentially for this quarterback situation now that obviously we're still unknown, but there's 2 trains of thoughts with Geno Smith and it's anybody's guess really at this point. Do they extend him? Do they cut him? Whatever. Do you think there's going to be a little more influence now that Clint's in the building? And we threw out the name Derek Carr on our show even just last week and said, hey, look, man, this could be a guy that could maybe come to Seattle, play some decent football, be that bridge, still go draft a guy. Maybe you get him a lot cheaper. What's your thoughts, or do you think it doesn't really play a role?
I think that was probably part of the discussions. In my personal opinion, I'm still uncertain what's going to happen with Geno and this whole situation, just because I think we're going to get some clarity probably starting after Senior Bowl. I think there'll be an idea, and it'll depend, like Kyle McCord, who's someone I'm super high on in this draft. Everybody is raving at what he's doing at Shrine Bowl this week and saying he's jumping up boards. Now, I know Will Howard isn't even doing Senior Bowl. He's pulled himself out of it. So, and a lot of scouts felt that was going to be an area for Will Howard to potentially even cement more of what he did in the college football playoffs. So when we talk about the quarterback position, I think we'll know with Geno very soon what it's going to look like. I still think potentially it's an extension because I think Kubiak looks at it and goes, hey, Geno's the type of guy that can run this offense for me. Look what I did with Derek Carr. There's things in Kubiak. So, like, just for an example, with Kubiak's philosophy, like the foundations of his offense, it's a zone running game. They love the wide zone in it. It's what they make their money on, which kind of bodes well for guys like Christian Haynes and some of these guys we got as more athletic linemen, Charles Cross, even Abe Lucas. But it does bring problems for guys like potentially like Olu, Lamea, and even Bradford, because they're more power gap scheme kind of guard. They more are the guys that you want to get going downhill, not necessarily on a 45. The other thing too is the play action passing. Like, that's a cornerstone of this system. They love to do the play action. They love to use the run to set up the pass. And the system's relatively quarterback friendly. Like, it simplifies the game for quarterbacks, provides high percentage throws. And there's a lot of bootleg concepts that come out of this one, which is something we haven't seen for a while in Seattle. Like, Geno can move. Like, we've been saying this year, get him on the move. Like, let's bootleg him out. So you didn't have the run game. And the thing we won't see with this, I am almost certain we're not going to see in 70 to 80% shotgun rate of formational base for Seattle going forward. I think you're going to see more 12, more 13 personnel. The tight ends are going to be an important part of this offense. I think this bodes well. Even the run game, the style of run game they have, actually, I think bodes better for Ken Walker than if they had potentially brought in Hank Fraley, just because Hank Fraley in that Detroit team is more power. Ken, when he was with Shane Waldron, was fine to running the outside zone stuff. That's where he kind of, reaped some of his rewards in his rookie year and stuff. Was we can get to that edge and he puts one foot and he starts getting up that sideline. We were in okay shape.
Yeah, no, no, you're right. And I think that's the exciting thing too. It's funny how you kind of like, you're excited to just get back to, like, let's just get to complimentary football, man. Like, you mentioned the shotgun, 70-80% shotgun, like, just things that were like, why are we doing this? Right. I think there's going to be a lot less of why are we doing this coming in 2025 when we're watching the Seattle Seahawks offense. I don't care if we're high flying or any of this kind of stuff. Like you said, quarterback friendly, get the ball out quick, right? Balanced offense, run the football. These are obvious things that were talked about in these interviews, couple of interviews with this guy. Exactly what Mike Macdonald wants. I think it's going to be a little more predictable as far as what to expect as a Seahawk fan with this offense. Not that he's going to be predictable running his offense, but just like, you're just going to see way more complimentary football and balanced offense. And I think that whatever else happens, because I still think, I know we've been saying it for a couple seasons now, but I still think we have the weapons. Obviously, I got my things I've said about Geno Smith. I think he's a good quarterback. But I also think that, yes, it's time for a change. We got to start looking at that. But I still think, like you said, he can run an offense with a guy that can set him up for success. Like, what is Geno's strengths? What are his weaknesses? Let me play off that and go from there. But you talk about DK and JSN and you mentioned Ken Walker, the style for him. We have guys. Now, you mentioned the 12, 13 personnel. Do we go get a tight end? Do we go get a Tyler Warren in the in the draft, something like that? I mean, you know what I mean? Like, who knows? Like, that's gonna be, free agency's coming up first. So we're gonna start getting answers. But the nice thing about this is that this is out of the way now. We
Yeah.
did the OC search is done. The first thing you put up, like, OC search is over. Like, now we can settle in and start building this thing up to, now Clint and Mike can start, saying, okay, how do we want, and John, how do we want this thing starting to look, right? So that to me is just as exciting as the hire today.
Well, and the thing that's good, like, when these coaches do come in, sometimes they end up bringing, we were talking about, if Fraley gets hired, who could he bring off Detroit's, line? Well, there's a couple guys like from the Saints, like, we talk about tight end. Juwan Johnson is someone that's a free agent that you may be able to get in and fits probably perfectly as a tight end too to AJ Barner.
Right.
Lewis Patrick is a guard that's quite good that they've had. Shane Lemieux, who's an ex-Oregon Duck kid from Yakima, he's only 27, another good guard play. Marquez Valdez-Scantling, we're looking for a third receiver. Like, there's pieces he could bring from New Orleans. So it'll be very, very interesting to see how it kind of shapes up and goes here. But, yeah, I'm excited about the hire. It'll be a good thing. Hey, Ryan, give me 2 seconds here, man. I just got to quickly go deal with something. So just start answering some of the questions we got going in here, and I'll be right back.
Okay. All right, guys. Bryce is taking a little break. Yeah, no, that's the biggest thing. Like, I think, everyone's going to agree that we're moving forward now. We're looking towards free agency and the draft. What do we got here? Let's talk about, you want to talk about some rookie quarterbacks. Jackson Dart. Jackson to JSN would be special. Yeah, look, I've been high on Jackson Dart. Bryce likes the kid. I think for me, you just look at him and you say, you kind of look, he's got some Josh Allen qualities. And I just think, man, if you can get this kid, get him in here, he can sit behind. If Geno Smith is here for another season or 2 seasons, there's no pressure, right? Get him in camp, see how he is. Who knows, man? Like, I want to just stop passing on guys and just go in to get a guy and see what he can do. Like, let's just draft quarterbacks. Let's draft quarterbacks, and let's draft quarterbacks next year and the year after that until one hits. We talked about, you look at Arizona Cardinals with Rosen, highly picked guy in the first round. It was a flop. What do? They don't waste time. They go get Kyler Murray with the first pick overall. You can have your thoughts and opinions about Kyler Murray, but it's just the fact about, hey, we don't need to hit it and get it perfect. And if we draft a guy and he's a bust, we got to hang on to him, man. You can move on from it. And I think that's what I want to see Seattle do. And the only problem is, I think Jackson Dart, and Bryce and I talked about it, I think the hype's going to get more and more real for this kid as we move along here and get close to the draft, just like it always does with certain guys. I mean, you talk about, a guy like Michael Penix last year, who, man, he was not high on guys' draft boards. I mean, you were talking about a guy, he was not projected to go in the first round, has his pro day, guys, all of a sudden guys like, man, this guy could run faster than we thought. He looked good. He just had all the intangibles. And then, he's a top 10 pick. We didn't even have a chance for him. So it's going to be interesting. But this draft for quarterbacks this year is exciting to the extent where there's value in the later rounds, because we're picking, and we just seem to always be picking. We miss out on those top dudes. Like, you looked at the top 6 guys last year, we didn't have a sniff, right? Because where we are, we've been middling, and when you're middling, man, you're stuck picking in the the 15, the 16. This year it's going to be 18. So, this year it's like, hey, you can go get a guy on day 2, maybe a day 3. But, I think, I just have a feeling Jackson Dart's going to be one of those guys that starts creeping up guys' boards. And, but man, I would love to see this guy. I would love to see this guy on in a Seattle uniform. I mean, look at this, man. We're getting the comments coming in. Carmen Schofield, I would love to take a chance on Dart, and this is just us as fans of Seattle here. Like, what's going to happen when you can't, if we're talking about Dart, how many other teams are talking about Dart right now? Bryce, what I was saying is, we got 2 people just popped up. Hey, I want to see, let's take a chance on Dart. And I said, hey, I feel like he's one of those guys that it's going to start creeping up guys' draft boards, and the hype's going to start becoming real. Just like Penix did last year. We're talking about how many other fans and teams are talking about this kid. So we'll see where he lands, man. But like I said, there's guys in this draft that we're in a situation now where you have value in the later rounds that, hey, man, it could work out this year for us where maybe we get a guy. We got Russell Wilson in the 3rd round, became a franchise quarterback for a long time for us. So, is there that guy this year? I don't know, but take a stab, see what's up. And like I said, if he sits behind Geno, wherever it's here, there's no pressure, let him develop, right? That's the beauty of it.
Well, and the interesting thing with the quarterback class, like I've, been following, along, and I've been doing my own research, but there's a lot of people that I've, kind of talked with that have the same kind of feeling that there's like a potential that there could be 4 quarterbacks selected in round 1, depending on how this draft process goes. Like,
yeah,
Shedeur Sanders, Cam Ward, we generally believe that they're going to go in the top, 10 picks potentially of this draft. But, there's a lot of people too that think, Dart, Howard, McCord, a lot of these guys could rise up this draft board really quick, depending on how they're pre-processed. And, the thing is we got to look at these quarterbacks and the situations they're going to. Like, for a guy like Dart or Howard, if they're getting picked in the later half of the, 1st round or, and stuff like that, like they're going to good teams. Yeah, exactly. They don't have to go and start. They don't have all the pressure, like a guy comes to Seattle and if Geno's the quarterback still, there's no need. Go and compete, see what you do. If you beat out Geno, great. If you don't, you're going to still learn some things and you don't have all the pressure in the world to go win right away with a team that I think you listen to a lot of the NFL analysts, a lot of the people talk about it. The team is closer to competing with the pieces they have and contending than they are to a full tear it down the nothing rebuild. You have too many pieces in place. The Leonard Williams, Witherspoons, the JSNs, the Ken Walkers. Like, the O-line is the biggest thing holding this team back. And that's why I think John Schneider doesn't really have an option anymore to be like, yeah, we can kind of kick that can down the road some more and not worry about, like, it's literally the biggest thing holding you back. It's a glaring need that your fan base is now noticing. Even the players, I think, realize this offensive line is holding them back because the defense was a top 10 unit the second half of the year. And if you get a comparable offensive line and Geno goes back to being a game manager and, you got a play caller in place now that wants to use the run, wants to use play action, wants to take some of the pressure off of Geno from throwing as much. Like, I know there's a lot of people look at Geno's stats this year and go, oh, he was amazing. Like, okay, he also threw the ball more than he's ever thrown it in his career, which means attempts, completions, yards tend to all go up in most cases. But his interceptions went up and his touchdowns didn't. Like, that was an issue. Like, the years where he threw less but was more efficient when it came to touchdowns versus interception ratios, like his comeback player of the year and even 2023, like, those are the numbers you want. If you can limit Geno to 27 throws a game, but you're running it for 100 yards plus and you're still putting up 25, 27 points a game with this defense, like, that was a big thing, I think, for Mike Macdonald. Like, let's get an OC in here that is going to be able to develop a young play caller, but at the same time, put us in situations where we're not playing from behind. We're actually managing the game throughout and understanding, like, hey, if we've got 4 minutes left, let's bleed this clock and put the stress on them when they get the ball back and they're down to go marching on this defense that we're building.
Yeah, no, I agree with all that. And you mentioned the guys in the later rounds that could go in the late first round to a good team. And that's why I was huge on Anthony Richardson, because of the fact that, people are like, oh, well, it's a good thing we avoided him. But the thing is, man, he didn't go to a better situation for Anthony Richardson. This would have been a way better situation for Anthony Richardson because all the things you just said, he's sitting behind Geno. The pressure's now how good would Anthony Richardson be when it's time called? Who knows? The thing is, when you're thrown to the wolves sometimes, especially when you don't even have a lot of experience in college, that's a tough situation. And again, the NFL, where fans expect everything right away, and the guys will write off after a season. Man, I don't know. So, like I said, if we got a Dart or somebody else late in the first round, if those guys are on the board, and you're like, you know what, we're taking them. I mean, I don't know, that would be an interesting situation. You know what I mean? If we're sitting there at 18, and it depends on these guys. Like you said, the Senior Bowl, the hype's getting real, and now all of a sudden, a guy like Dart's. I'll just use Dart for example. He's up on those draft board projections. do we take him there, or I don't know if we would. I don't know. I don't think John would do it. I wouldn't be mad at the pick. I think it would be reaching. I don't know, man. It's just because I think somebody will. I just see him specifically. He'll move up high on guys' projections. It's going to be interesting, but I don't know, man. I don't know. I just don't want to be. I don't want to be in a situation where we're just sort of like, we get to say a day 2, and then he's off the board. Maybe another couple guys are off the board, and then who are you left with? Because maybe guys have reached that. That's the only thing I'm a little worried about.
I don't think we're taking a QB at 18. I just don't.
I don't think we are. I don't think we are. But my point.
Yeah, I would say they're going to go O-line or D-line with their first pick of this draft.
I think it's safe to say, yeah.
That's what I would assume, and that's even if they do something, like even if they go and get like Taven Jenkins or Trey Smith or someone like that in free agency and completely shock us all. I still think they're going to address the trenches because that's where
they did sign Trey. Say they go sign Trey Smith. Then I would be more like, or even a guy close to it. Then I'd be more like, you know what? If we took one of those other quarterbacks at 18, I wouldn't be upset. And I'm not saying
the value isn't there for it though. That's the whole thing.
I know,
and that's the thing. Like you're gonna.
No, I know what you're saying.
You're better off going and getting another piece to add to the offensive line. Like, say you can go get Trey Smith, and then say somehow Tyler Booker's there, or one of these guards that you really want, or one of the guard tackles is there, like a Donovan Jackson. Like,
I hear you.
And add another piece because Charles Cross and Abe Lucas, like Abe Lucas is playing on the last year of his deal this year. He doesn't have a 5th-year option. Charles Cross may get the 5th-year option, so he's basically in an audition year as well this year. You may need to find that piece that potentially you're bumping out to play one of those spots if one of them leaves, right? Potentially.
Mm-hmm.
And, I think you're better off to go and get the guy. Like, it'd be more justifiable to do it in round 2 and be like, Will Howard's still there, or, take a shot there. And
I feel like, no, I tend to agree.
Year.
Well, I tend to agree.
So, I see someone in, Zach comes in here and he goes, if Geno's here, no QB round 1 or 2. I don't truly believe that. I really don't, because it'll depend on what the extension looks like for Geno. I don't think Sam Howell did himself any favors this year, from training camp to the game he played in Green Bay or anything, to really say to the Seahawk organizational brass, like, hey, look, like, I'm the QB of the future. I think there's a statement that he's going to be fighting for his roster spot with Jaren Hall. I think Jaren Hall's got more of a right to compete in that number 2 spot with Sam Howell going into next year before the draft happens. I'm more interested, and it'll be interesting to see that we've got to be able to figure out how to get this running game going. That's going to be the biggest thing. Once you get the running game going and know how you want to do it, and that's going to be the thing. Like, if Kubiak can get Rick Dennison in here, or one of these O-line coaches he's worked with in the past, or his dad, that has history of building good O-lines. And in this scheme, you're going to see a fact of, okay, these are the type of linemen we want. This is the direction we're going, and go. Like, I just don't see that from Scott Huff. And I don't think Scott Huff, honestly, I will be shocked if Scott Huff is on this coaching staff. And the other guy I don't think that's going to be here is Jake Peets. I think Jake Peets is done, because he's already been interviewed for an OC position. I think there's going to be a complete overhaul potentially, except for maybe Kennedy Polamalu, at the quarterback, quarterback coach, everything else. I think there's going to be a massive overhaul on it by Kubiak. And it's going to be interesting to see, like, who does survive. Like, there's a chance even our receiver coach is down at Senior Bowl. Maybe he survives, maybe. Or maybe all of a sudden they turn around and go, hey, Keenan McCardell, who's worked with Kubiak, do you want to come be the receiver coach in Seattle and work with DK Metcalf and JSN and be the receiver coach? And when he was, I will point this out, when he was the receiver coach in Minnesota, Adam Thielen and Justin Jefferson were a dynamic duo together. So it'll be very interesting to see how that kind of all pieces together. But just like a couple things on Kubiak, and like, some of his strengths with his, we went over some of his strengths, but the strengths of the running game. Like, when he was Minnesota's offensive coordinator, for example, in 2021, he had Delvin Cook, the centerpiece of the Vikings offense at that point in the running game. They finished 5th in the NFL in rush yards per game with 127.2. Explosive plays, that was a big thing, and it came off of the play action passing game. It was just Justin Jefferson, Thielen cooked off of the play action, and then they had a balanced approach. Like the Vikings team was relatively balanced in run pass ratio, with the offense leaning more to the run even.
Mhm.
So, that was when he was with Minnesota not that long ago. And then, here's some characteristics, heavy personnel usage. They use 12 a lot. They established the run for that play action, wide receiver driven passing attack. In Minnesota, Justin Jefferson thrived in Kubiak's scheme. Like, he amassed in 2021 1,600 receiving yards.
Yeah, man,
So
that could be DK Metcalf, right?
that could be DK, that could be JSN, that could be any of them. And now that's the whole thing. Like, and his efficiency for quarterbacks. Kirk Cousins posted, strong numbers, including a 13-7 touchdown interception ratio and a passer rating of 103. 33, sorry. Yeah, to 7.
No, I mean, I mentioned that in the beginning of the show. 33 is fantastic, right? And you talk about, and that's the thing with Geno. Like, we debate about how many picks were his fault. Well, look, if he put up 33 or 35 or Baker Mayfield amount of touchdowns, it wouldn't be as big of a conversation. We talk about the red zone stuff, and yes, that's not good, but it was the lack of finishing too, and red zone efficiency was not good at all last year. So it was all the above, right? And so I think, you're excited, guys. Real quick, get some comments in. Do you guys like the hire? Like, fire in the comment board. Do you like the hire? Were you expecting something else? Did you want to go a little more outside the box? Like, because Bryce and I are happy about this hire, man. Like, we just think high floor, high ceiling. What he's done in San Francisco with Brock, with Minnesota, with Kirk. There's just a lot of good things with this guy, a combination of things. And then if you trust in Mike Macdonald and say, I think Mike brought a guy in here that aligns with him. Like, Bryce, you said this many times, like, this was not a dude that aligned with Mike. And we're talking about Ryan Grubb, and that's just a recipe for disaster. And just you need to align with your head coach and his philosophy. So just that was, based on all the other stuff that you see on the field, just that aspect was enough to say, look, we have to move on from you. So you look, if you believe in Mike Macdonald as your head coach, I think you're a little more behind this hire as well, because you got confidence in that. So that's what I'm looking at. Because I when we had Chris, we've talked about this too. We all think, hey man, this defense, look, it was trending in the right direction last year, and that's what's exciting about this offseason. What pieces are we going to add that are really going to elevate this D? Because that could be the focus too. If we can just be a dominant defense again, man, offense doesn't have to go crazy. Just Clint, do your job. Just play, let's just be efficient and balanced, and we're going to be a good team.
Well, and here's the thing, like, here's two names, like, I kind of mentioned earlier, to watch for O-line coach and run game coordinator. One is Phil Reischer, who's the O-line and run game coordinator for the Jags, but he was the O-line coach in 2021 for Klint Kubiak. And the other one's Butch Berry, who, has been in the NFL since 2015, but he's been an O-line coach all the way through, with Tampa Bay from 2015 to 2018, Green Bay in 2020, 2021 he was with San Francisco, and then 2022 he was Denver, and then the last 2 years he's been with Miami, where they've had one of the better rushing attacks with Raheem Mostert and HN down there in Miami. So, it's things like that where this is what Kubiak, I think, gives you more than the other guys potentially is, hey, we can maybe go get one of these guys, from another team. And then you look at even Rick Dennison that we talk about. There's the other name. Like, does he come across? Because it sounds like it's either down to McCarthy or Kellen Moore for the head coaching job down in New Orleans. And they are going to have their own guys they're going to want to bring into that role. So there's a chance that we could have potentially, 3 solid options to bring into Seattle for a run game. And the big thing with, like, the one guy, in my opinion, like Dennison, the thing about him is he's already worked with Kubiak multiple times before, and he knows the system really well. And
Right.
That's going to be part of the conversation. And here's an interesting one though that I just want to bring up on the screen here. I think it's from Thrill House here. Did he sign for just 1 year? I don't think so. I don't think Seattle would have just done a 1 year
I don't think the
hire.
terms are out yet. They're not out, but
they're not out yet.
I doubt it.
They're not doing that. And I think that was maybe, guys, honestly, like for our listeners, I think this is maybe why that search took so long, is they wanted to find a guy that they could build this with. Like, you remember when Pete hired Darrell Bevel in 2011 to come in after Jeremy Bates, he was here till 2017. He was here for 6 seasons. So I think that's what they're trying to establish, is they're trying to establish some continuity, because like I said earlier in the show, if Mike Macdonald hands the keys to the defense to somebody and that guy leaves, Mike Macdonald just takes the keys back and starts driving the car again. Like, it's no big deal. But on the offensive side, he wants somebody that's going to be able to be there to build some continuity, who understands what he's trying to build on the defensive side and marry it together. So it's going to be really interesting to see how this all kind of shapes up. But guys, get your questions in. Any more comments, any more feelings about this hire?
Yeah.
We're going to go another 5 minutes here or so, guys.
Yeah. Hey,
we're going to hop
I
off.
want to mention real quick on a couple of things, man. I got to shout out, because we haven't talked about it yet, man. Pete Carroll, the Raiders, dude. Like, touch on that real quick, guys. Touch on that. Like, that's pretty cool, man. Like, took a year off, nothing but love for Pete, a Raider. Man, it's just going to be cool to see. Raider Nation seems to be fired up. I think it's a great hire, especially for what that organization has been doing the last, I don't know how many years. Hopefully he can bring some stability in there and just kind of get them back on track. I think it'd be cool for them and Pete. And then I want to hear your thoughts, but then, hey man, at least you're not the Cowboys, man, going out and just giving up already and hiring Shoddy as your head coach. Dude, like, it's like, Jerry, just tell me that you want to just have control without telling me. You know what I mean? Like, oh my goodness, like, Shoddy's your head coach. I don't get it, man. I mean, dude, talk about Pete.
The thing is Pete wasn't brought there to win a Super Bowl in Vegas. He was brought there to get that culture, get that organization pointed back in the right direction.
Yeah.
Now, the interesting thing is, what I heard with his interview in Chicago was the reason why he didn't even get a look, because he was supposedly a guy that they were really interested in Chicago, and Ben Johnson, was Ryan Poles and them couldn't get over the fact of, like, he wasn't being innovative with his coaching hires. He was very much doing the typical Pete thing of going back to the guys in his Rolodex that are, guys he's coached with before. And you look at the guys that are already being linked to being potentially coming back to his staff. Darrell Bevel as OC, Tom Gable as, O-line and run game coordinator. Like, he's literally getting the bad. I wouldn't be surprised if Gus Bradley's not the DC. Like, I think there's a good chance Pete really brings his old staff back together and goes about it, the similarly same way he did in Seattle to rebuild that culture.
We can't get Shoddy.
No, I won't be able to get Shoddy. And I think there's some bad blood there between Pete and Shoddy and how that.
I think so too. Yeah, no.
But it'll be interesting to see how it goes for the Raiders, because Pete can handle the Vegas aspect of it, I think, better than most.
Yeah,
because he did it in LA with the Trojans for so long, and dealing with the superstardom and all that kind of stuff. Like, that's not what I'm worried about with Pete. The thing I'm worried about is that is a different NFL franchise than I think Pete's ever dealt with in his career, whether it was the Jets, whether it was the Patriots.
You think it's a little different now, though, that they're in Vegas? It's not Oakland. It's not LA.
You still have that diehard fan base, though, dude. That's the thing, and that's
they travel well, but I just, man.
But they're hard on their. They have an identity. That's the thing about the Raiders. They have an identity. They
feel like
have.
I really feel like it's lost a little bit since it left Oakland. I mean, that's just me. I don't know. I just feel it's the brand new stadium, all of it. When they were in the black hole in Oakland, dude, like it was like you didn't want to go there as an opposing fan, dude. I don't know.
I agree. But the thing for me is, it's still that they're still the Raiders. They're still that the bad boys kind of in a way. They still have that mantra to him. And that's why I think it'll be interesting for Pete, because Pete's raw kind of attitude and everything to go to what has presumably been like the asshole team of the NFL is going to make it very interesting to see how this all kind of works out together. Now, Shoddy down in the Cowboys for Dallas, I kind of understand it because Dak Prescott has had some pretty good years, and I think Jerry also wanted a puppet. And it's
that's what I'm
Shoddy,
saying.
but it's Shoddy's one chance. He was a hot coordinator coming
But
out
the
of the
puppet
Jets.
is exactly what I was thinking, dude. Like,
It's his one opportunity to try and be a head coach like his dad was. So he's going to take the opportunity, and it worked out. Now, the Saints are going to be the interesting job, I think, of who they hire. Because I think if they hire Mike McCarthy, he'll right the ship, and then it'll be 500 football.
God.
Kellen Moore is the upside hire if he wants to leave Philadelphia. If they win a Super Bowl this year, he may very well want to stay and run it back with the Eagles. So, it'll be very interesting to see how it kind of shapes up. But we'll get a couple more of these questions in here and comments. Here we go.
I'll say Klint Kubiak. Yeah, go for
it. So Mad Wallop goes, Klint Kubiak will help with the QB we draft. Agreed. He probably will. Here's a good one from Ben.
I like this.
Do you think we will be good and a Super Bowl team in 2025 or 2026?
I don't think 25.
I don't think 25. I think it'll be a playoff team again. I think the thing is I think next year.
I think so. We should be.
Next year, the divisional round has to be the floor, not the wild card round. The divisional round needs to be the floor.
Well, look at the Washington Commanders, for example, right?
Exactly.
I mean, off and running. There's no like, well, let's just take our time, and in year 4 we'll get to the NFC, championship game, and I think too. My focus is I don't want to focus on how the other teams are doing in our division as far as like. I just want to be great. Like we as fans, we got to focus on. Let's just focus on us, not focus on. Oh, is this on the decline or is the Niners on the decline? Because I'll say this: as long as Sean McVay's there, that's going to be a tough football team. As long as the Niners have who they have running their organization, they're going to be good. Like, look, they could have a down year. In a year or two, they could be back on top. So I think we just got to focus on us being great. And the rest will take care of himself. That's sort of my outlook. And like you said, you know what I mean? Like, let's go win 12 games and win our division and not be like, well, if we win 10, the Rams sort of stumble, we'll win the division. Like this year, that's what I felt like. I felt like, okay, yeah, the new regime and everything, but people are like, man, if we would have did this or done that, or if the Rams didn't fluke out and be like, nah, man, no, let's just be good. Don't think 10 wins should win you a division. Think 12, think 13, be great. And I think that's where this team can head. If Clint works out, he brings in the right guys, like you said, Mike keeps continuing to build a dominant defense, then there's no reason why we shouldn't be a 12 or 13 team, right? And then, like you said, to your point, the floor is the divisional round. And then, 26. Now, okay, what's the floor, in our opinion? And with the Seahawks, NFC Championship, I don't know what your thoughts are on that, but that's how I look at it as a team in our division. Whatever, like you got to win the divisional games, but don't worry about if this team's good or bad. Like just go be good.
No, and I agree with you. You got to go be, you got to go and compete. But the thing that's going to be very interesting is the Seahawks have a bit of a luxury right now, and I know that's kind of a weird word to use. The NFC is not loaded at the quarterback position currently. It really isn't. Like Caleb Williams struggled. Dude. Michael Penix might bring Atlanta to, but really you're talking about the best quarterback, in my opinion, in the NFC is Jaden Daniels. Even though Jalen Hurts is going to the Super Bowl, Jaden Daniels is the top NFC
Jaden Daniels looks like the real deal, dude.
Oh, I know, but he's currently your top quarterback in the NFC. All the power quarterbacks are in the AFC right now. You've got Allen, Mahomes, Burrow, Lamar.
Yeah.
Like they're all over there. Like you're trying to win the NFC. You're not trying to it's great when you get to the Super Bowl and you play one of those guys. Then you got to deal with them for that one game, but you're trying to win the NFC conference. Right now the quarterback play in the NFC is not nearly as good as the AFC. So you have an opportunity here if you build it right and get going where you can get momentum going forward. And that's why I think 2026 will be the start of their Super Bowl window, to answer Ben's question here.
And like you said, man, you look at Philly right now, right? Jalen Hurts, he's not really to write home again about, but look, they got a dominant running game. What a boost bringing in Saquon Barkley and the trenches, dude. Like, I mean, look at that defensive line. You talk about a team that just builds it, and like, and even last year when it's like, wow, they grabbed Jalen Carter at I think what 9, like, just adding to the already dominant line. They just keep adding, and okay, we got a guy that is mobile, can make some throws, but he's like you said, he's not in that top 7 quarterback talk. Like and that's a guy that's going to the Super Bowl.
Yep.
So like you said, you get a guy, you build this thing right. You do it right, establish the run game, and we have runners. We don't have a Saquon Barkley, but we have runners, and you have weapons, and but we could transform and become a really good defense. I'm excited to get off to the start this season with Mike, with maybe not everybody he needs. Maybe that'll be 2026, but a lot more of the guys that he wants in that defense. I think that's going to be exciting to start camp with that. It was evident with the linebackers, right? Like there's certain pieces that just like, oh my goodness, like this is just not, I need something different, so that's going to be the exciting thing as well, to see how good this defense gets off to a start and starts that dominating,
Well,
period.
exactly. And the other interesting point, and I'll touch on this, quickly with it, is you're now looking at a situation where Seattle's ahead of where it was last year.
Yeah, exactly.
We still didn't have Mike Macdonald yet at this point last year. We were still
playing,
going through that. Like this, I think it was this coming week, we went to interview him and then hired him like later on in the week, basically at the end of the week. You're ahead of that process. He's already been going through this. Yes, they just hired their OC. That's not nearly as big as hiring the head coach. And now you got Senior Bowl. Now you've got the ability for Kubiak to even go to Senior Bowl if he wants to, because he was probably still doing work on just potential guys in case he did get his job, and now he's got it. So here you go. But Ian's question here, I like the hire. Now the question is, who is the O-line coach, and will Schneider fix the O-line? I feel like Kubiak won't have to tell him. I think ownership may do it for him. Would you guys agree? I think I think there's a good chance ownership's probably said something. I think there's a good chance Mike Macdonald might have gone and said something to him.
I could be all.
I think again, part of these interview processes are these coaches selling their vision to these guys and going, "Hey, look, this isn't what's working here, and this is how I can make it work, but I need this, 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 and this to do it." Yeah. And like I said before, the analogy with that defense was they had to overhaul it. So they overhauled the recipe of Pete's defense. They tried to change it. Mike Macdonald came in as the new cook, added some different spices. Now he's got a pretty good thing cooking. We'll see what happens with this offense. I think there's a good chance Clint Kubiak, with just the scheme changes, will make this offense work a little bit better. I'm here we go. Corey, always good to have Corey in the chat. I think this scheme will help Ken Walker a lot. I agree. I think it will. I think this might be been the best type of OC to come in and help Ken Walker get back to where he was.
Yeah. We
got K-Jab. Appreciate the show. Thank you, man.
I appreciate everyone chiming in, man.
Eric, here we go. Excited about Kubiak. Helps he can use his dad for game plan and scouting resources. Enjoying the show. Yeah, he definitely can. And thank you for the shout out there, Eric. But yeah, no, definitely. His dad has a lot of connections in the NFL, right? You got to think his dad learned this system and built his variation off it from Mike Shanahan in Denver. He played under Mike, and then coached under Mike for years and was Mike's basic OC for the majority of the John Elway time. So there's a guy for you that knows the system inside and out. So it'll be interesting to see how much knowledge Clint has and can, use and even get from, his dad, Gary.
Yeah.
3D tables. If job security was the only thing preventing him from putting together a good loan line, he should have been fired regardless. John Schneider questions. John Schneider, because he won a Super Bowl, went back to another one, built a Hall of Fame defense, realistically a top 3 defense of all time.
Yep.
Got himself a lot of grace. And the fact they've consistently been a playoff team gets you a lot of grace in the NFL, because you got to think about it. We missed the playoffs in what? We missed the playoffs since John Schneider's taken over 2011, 2017, 2021, and then 2023, and now 2024. So
yeah, that's what I said. I've said that all along. Because I remember I said that on the show. I said, look, it doesn't even feel like, when was the last time we went to Super Bowl? What, 11 years ago? Like if you and me,
yes.
if you and I sat here and just reminisce, it sure doesn't feel like that. It doesn't feel like 11 years ago. It feels like we still, I want to bring up the 1 yard line thing, right? But it doesn't feel like 11 years ago, man. And same with when we pounded the hell out of Denver. So not only does your leash get extended and get super long, I think people's memories sort of get distorted. But like, yeah, John just built that freaking awesome defense. Like, we give him some time. Wait a second. We've only won one playoff game in the last, I don't even know the stats. Not very good. What is it? 9 years? Like, so I think, yes, Hawks fans, and now the pressure is going to mount up on John. I think that leash is now getting close to the end. That, hey, like the last comment you threw up, his ownership talk, like, yeah, man, like, and I think everyone's had a conversation about this O-line, getting things right. Like, dude, you don't have another forever here because you were at Super Bowls. But the point is, to your point, yes, that leash does get long. Whether you're Mike Tomlin because you've won a couple of Super Bowls and you've had winning seasons, but you're squeaking winning seasons, right? So, you talk to Pittsburgh fans, someone might say, we're kind of over that. We want something new in here. We need fresh eyes on things, fresh ideas. And, that's the same thing that happened to Pete, man. Like, it's like, dude, it played its course. Everyone respected you, but the message got dry. People weren't responding. Your schemes, I don't know, whatever you want to say. You're here for a long time. That alone, even with John, that alone, sometimes we need a fresh look on things. But hey, man, we'll see. This is gonna be, like we said, it's gonna be an interesting offseason for John. Because he's got to nail it. He's got to nail it on a lot of things. And I think even Chris said there's not like a ton of things to do, but there's a few important things that he's got to hit on.
No, exactly. And that'll be, kind of what determines what John Schneider's future looks like in Seattle. If he has another offseason like he did this year, pretty sure John Schneider will not be the GM of the Seattle Seahawks going into the 2026 season. So, but guys, that's kind of it for us tonight. We appreciate you guys kind of coming and joining the show here and doing this live with us. We appreciate it. But we'll be back tomorrow with our live show with Mookie Alexander, managing editor of Field Gulls. He's going to come over and do his pulse of the Hawks. So we'll get Mookie's perspective on the hire. We'll talk a little bit about this Super Bowl matchup that is coming up between the Eagles and Chiefs, because I know we're all super excited about this being the second time in 3 years that we're getting this Super Bowl. So that'll be interesting. And then we'll talk about, the cap situation for Seattle. We're going to go and do an exercise on over the cap and how we can create some space for Seattle and potentially add some pieces to help this team make a playoff push next year. So, awesome. Brian, anything you want to add?
Nah, man, fired up, guys. Appreciate everyone tuning in. Make sure you go sub. If you guys are watching, you haven't subbed yet, hit the sub button. Like the videos, because that. And live show, so get your comments in, all that fun stuff. It's gonna be a good time. So that's it for us. Go Hawks.
Go Hawks.